Risa today. Oh, and Carson. Welcome, Carson, to the group, everybody. Give her a hand. Okay, so anyway, today I have another lesson, and this lesson is going to be valve trains. I said I had something that was relevant, but now I'm making a slideshow that's easier, so I'm working on that. College is a little espresso depresso. So today's lesson is the valve train. Now you remember I talked about the crankshaft, which is at the bottom. I talked about the camshaft a little bit. It's on top that moves the valves. But we're going to learn a little more about valves and camshafts and how they all relate to each other. So first off, there's two main types of camshafts. There is the dual overhead cam and the push rod cam. The first one we're going to learn about is the push rod, which is the older of these two technologies. It's not as simple actually, but it was used first because it took a while to figure out how to actually effectively use dual overhead cams. So let's look at the model here. So look at this one first. So if you'll notice, this is the valve right here, and these are the intake port. Sorry, you just have to deal with some glare. So this is the cam. If you notice, it's not a perfect circle. It has a slight lobe. So when it rotates this way, it pushes this little rod here, which pushes this up, which moves this rocker arm down, which pushes down on the valve, which opens it up, which lets air and if you have a carbureted engine, gasoline in. And I could draw it, but there's also a spring right here. So when this goes, it compresses the spring, and when the camshaft rotates, pushes up, and then keeps rotating, the spring pushes it so that the valve closes faster. There's usually, so if you look here, there's at least two valves per cylinder. One for intake that opens to let air and gas in, and one for exhaust that opens to let those exhaust gases out and go through the whole exhaust process, which we learned about a little bit ago. So the main part of a single cam or the push rod is, so if you're looking at it right here, it sits in the middle of the engine. It's in an inline engine, it technically does sit over the top of the cylinder, but it sits inside the engine block instead of on top of the engine itself in the cylinder head, which we'll learn about later. In a V engine, it actually sits in the middle of the V, right in that crest of the V. So, a push rod engine, if you look right here, this is a really much more simple drawing, but there's only one camshaft for all the valves. So if you look up Google a camshaft, and you'll notice there's more than one lobe, and they're like staggered across the camshaft, and that's because different valves need to open at different times. So how push rod works is those lifters that you saw, this lifter you saw right here, it's right here at the camshaft, and the camshaft pushes this big long thing called a push rod, which pushes the things up, and there's only one, so it does all of them. So there's a bunch of little push rods all around, up and down this camshaft. This is think about it like a light switch. You flick a light switch up and down, and if you hold a tiny little pole and push that light switch up, you're still pushing. Oh, hey Dre, that's Dre right there. Okay, so if you use a light switch to push that, or a little pole to push that light switch up, you're still doing it, but you can't do it as precisely as you want because you're trying to maneuver it around, which is kind of like this. Which leads to the second type, which is a dual overhead cam. So if you were to have a push rod or single cam, you just have, this is what the timing chain looks like on a dual overhead. Because since there's two camshafts, the timing chain, which this is the crankshaft, these are your camshafts, it kind of has to do this little weird upside down triangle. But with a single overhead, there's only one here, so it just kind of ups and downs like that. So if we look at the model of this here, there's two cams, one for the exhaust, one for the intake. I can't draw it in a V engine because I just can't really draw very well. So this one rotates. So there's not as many cam lobes in dual overhead cam engines because it only has to have half the amount, half for intake, half for exhaust. So this one, it sits directly over the top of the cylinders. So when it rotates, it pushes this. It's all lifted because it's pushing it down now, but it pushes it down, and the spring sits like within this part right here. I just can't draw springs. It pushes it down, air comes in, gas comes in. It's carbureted, and then this one pushes it down like that. It's fairly simple. I didn't draw a cylinder in there. So that's how that works. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the camshaft itself instead of just how they work in relation to each other. So let me draw it out a little bigger. So during this time, I want to just ask you guys, like, how's life been? How's your schooling going? Have you I don't know what else. So here we go, 3 different cams. So when a cam opens, there's different advantages to having it open different ways. So first there's valve timing, which is when it opens. So when the cylinder comes up, if it opens earlier, your timing is earlier. If it comes up and up and up and then you open it later, the timing is later. Then there's valve lift, which refers to how much it goes. So if it opens, so this is like my cylinder walls right here. If it opens that much, that's pretty low valve lift. But if it goes all the way, that's high. That's referred to as high lift. And then there's duration, how long it stays open. So if it opens, cylinder comes up, then it closes. And then, someone replied to me on TikTok. I'm about to fight them. I bet it's Trump 2020 person. I hate Trump 2020 people. Anyway, so opens, stays open, then closes, or opens, comes up, closes. So those are the 3 main factors there. And there actually is ways, and there's advantages to some. So here we go. So a camshaft like this is a really small one. It's not going to lift much. It's going to stay open for a little longer, though. This is like in cars that are more focused on fuel economy. And this one is going to be high lift and but low time because it's more pointy here. But this one, it's going to be high lift and high duration. Like, while high performance engines will have this, slightly less high performance engines will have this. So you got to pick a balancing point between fuel efficiency, and performance. And engines with bigger cams are like those, old 70s muscle cars, like they grumble super low. That's because the valves are opening a bunch and they can't rev as high and things like that. Or no, they don't work at low revs. But these small ones, they work good at low revs, but you can't make any more power or anything because you can't lift them more if you want to get more fuel and more air in. Air in, not air in. So there's actually ways to make it so that you can have 2 different heights, 2 different timing settings, and that's a little more complicated. So I'll tell you about that. There's engines that have 4 camshafts. There's engines that have no camshafts, and I promise once we learn the fundamentals, we'll get over that. So, bye.